The whole world adores her, but people from her own country hate her. She conquers the most fashionable heights, while at the same time receiving snide comments from her compatriots. Why is Hande Erçel so disliked in Turkey, and how does the actress herself feel about it?
Subscribe to our channel to always stay in the loop with the most fascinating content. And now, let's get started.
There are stars in Turkey who are loved as loudly as they are criticized. And then there's Hande Erçel, an actress around whom love and irritation coexist simultaneously, like two parts of the same mechanism. If you look only at the numbers, the picture seems almost perfect. She remains one of the most recognizable Turkish actresses, the most popular Turkish actress on Instagram, the face of international brands, and a constant feature in foreign fashion and entertainment publications. Outside Turkey, she is increasingly described as a global face, luxury muse, and Turkish star with worldwide appeal. While Vogue Business even highlighted her media power during fashion weeks. But inside Turkey itself, everything works much more complicatedly. There, Hande is not just a star, but a convenient screen onto which society projects several irritations at once. Dislike for women who are too beautiful, distrust of easy success, class anger, conservative morality, and an almost belesnenoi desire to dissect someone else's life piece by piece. So it's more accurate to ask not why don't they like her in Turkey, but why is she so easily and so willingly lynched? And there are several answers here, from acting criticism to completely cruel stories related to her body, family, and personal life. The first layer is the most obvious and oldest. In Turkey, for years they haven't forgiven Hande the formula, too beautiful, therefore suspiciously successful. As soon as a new project comes out, the conversation very quickly shifts not to the role, but to the question of whether she can act at all. This came up before, but it became especially noticeable in 2025 amid discussions of her series, when Turkish media and social networks once again spun the familiar circle. Ratings are stalling, so Hande is to blame. A scene didn't work, so she has no range. An emotion seemed insufficient to someone, and the old thesis about beautiful but weak actress is launched again. At the same time, the reverse reaction is also important. Already in 2026, the well-known actress Nevra Serezli publicly stood up for her, saying that Hande is unfairly attacked and that some of the claims against her have long been disproportionate. But if it all came down to the profession alone, the story would be much cleaner. The real Turkish hate against Hande is much more bodily and much meaner. For years, she has been discussed not just as an actress, but as an appearance that can be publicly measured, compared, and ridiculed. In 2025, in a major AB Talks interview, Hande spoke very openly for the first time about how comments about her body broke her and how painfully she went through that period. Around her, for years, they really spread the story that she had gained a lot of weight. In Turkish publics and entertainment videos, this was sometimes even turned into absurd figures like plus 30 kilograms. But Hande herself later said something different. People greatly exaggerated, and the real difference, according to her, was about 8 kilograms, which came and went along with adolescence and the demands of the profession. In other words, society mocked not the fact for months, but a fantasy about her body. The scariest thing here is not even the numbers, but how she describes the consequences. In that same AB Talks and in retellings by Turkish media, Hande admits that back then they hit her from all sides, her appearance, her surroundings, her acting, and that it was especially cruel because she was very young. She directly says that many things done to her publicly back then were unacceptable toward a very young girl, and adds an important phrase: she has not forgiven that period. There is a very precise nerve in this entire story with Hande. In Turkey, they don't just criticize her, they too often punish her for the very fact of being noticeable.
Here is. Here's something. It's not just one thing. It's a situation. Back then, while I was going through those bad days I mentioned, my country made me feel really terrible. That's why there are things I can't forgive. Situations that happen, people's social media comments, or I don't know, the tabloid comments were so strange, so shallow. I mean, I'll never forgive them. Those things happened. I can say that, yes. Without knowing me at all, without understanding what I was going through, people made such cruel comments. Like you mentioned, maybe they thought I was overweight because of my body. It really did. And if I want to be overweight, I will be. I wasn't, in my opinion, but I was attacked so much for my weight, my acting, my circle back then. Well, I was dealing with something entirely different. I wish they'd chosen a better time. But that affected my whole life deeply. Maybe this person I've become today, this calmness, is because of that. It affected me so much. I don't forgive this. I was very young, and I don't think those are things you should do to such a young girl. It's a very bad example, a very wrong thing. I mean, those were very wrong actions toward a very young girl. I won't forgive that period. I don't forgive it.
And it was precisely at the moment when society had already learned to discuss her body that real tragedy entered her life, next to which any talk about kilograms should have automatically become indecent. In January 2019, Hande lost her mother, Hande Erçel, who had long fought cancer. After her mother's death, the actress said she clung to work simply because she didn't know how else to hold on to life. The Turkish press recorded this phase as a period of very heavy internal breakdown, while the public, and this is especially telling, continued to discuss her appearance even when grief was happening in her family. Later, Hande herself would say that it was then that she finally saw how cruel people can be. After her mother's death, the public began discussing the other extreme, not that she had gained too much weight, but that she had lost too much. And this too reveals one of the most toxic features of the Turkish show business. A woman in it is almost never left the right to simply live through pain without public expertise of her body. If she gains weight, they laugh at it. If she loses a lot after a loss, it again becomes a topic for endless comments, screenshots, and concern with the taste of judgment. Over time, Hande developed the only possible defense: emotional distance. In March 2025, commenting on a wave of discussions around one of her looks, she directly said that she no longer reads comments. And in February 2026, responding to a new wave of attacks already regarding her acting and criticism in general, she added even more harshly, "You can't stop people. Everyone has different tastes, but it would be good to at least leave out the malicious intent. This is a very adult and very sad formula. If you can't stop the flow, you have to stop looking into it." But the hate toward Hande in Turkey is not limited to her body and profession. There is another layer on which she is attacked especially cruelly in a feminine way, her personal life. Every one of her romances in the Turkish infosphere instantly turns into a reason to declare her either too accessible, too ambitious, or unsuitable for the man she's standing next to now. First, there was Murat Dalkılıç, then Kerem Bürsin, then Hakan Sabancı, later, rumors about Onur Guvenatam. In men's biographies, such things are usually described as a rich personal life or searching for oneself. In Hande's case, it's often presented as a reason for moralizing, too many names nearby, falls in love too often, lives too fast. And it's here that Turkish show business especially clearly shows double standards. Men in similar stories are romanticized, while a woman is interrogated. The story with Hakan Sabancı became a perfect example of how quickly Turkey turns an actress into an object of collective judgment. While the relationship looked beautiful, vacation photos, expensive trips, family meetings, part of the press painted it as a fairy tale about the bride of a big dynasty. As soon as rumors of cracks appeared, everything was immediately dragged into the conversation. Alleged family dissatisfaction, her on-screen scenes, and whether an actress suits such a surname. When the name of producer Onur Guvenatam later surfaced, the reaction was also instant. She was again discussed not as a woman building a new life after a breakup, but as the heroine of a chronicle. Who's next? In other words, society doesn't just follow her romances, it uses them as a tool to judge her character. A separate zone of Turkish irritation is her on-screen freedom on digital platforms. When Hande worked in classic broadcast rom-coms, the public accepted her in a familiar format. Light chemistry, kisses within television limits, at most hints of passion. But streaming, especially Netflix and other platforms, changed the rules. Romance became more bodily, scenes bolder, editing no longer cut away to curtains. And it was at that moment that part of the Turkish audience seemed to decide that an adult Hande was already too much. After explicit scenes in projects with Barış Arduç, another wave of criticism fell on her, and tabloids happily linked on-screen intimacy to problems in her personal life. Hande herself in 2025 responded to these attacks directly. If they were really worried about the lynching, they would have stopped doing this long ago. There is also another trigger that works almost automatically in Turkey. Hande is too noticeable. There is too much of her. She is simultaneously in series, on red carpets, at fashion weeks, in commercials, in jewelry and beauty campaigns, in interviews, in TikTok edits, and in tabloids. For the international industry, this is called a strong brand. For the irritated part of the Turkish audience, they push her everywhere. And that's why any new project is perceived not as a separate work, but as another reason to say, why her again? At the same time, outside Turkey, the exact opposite logic works. The more often she is seen, the more firmly she establishes herself as an export Turkish star. International brands choose her precisely for her recognizability, numbers, and ability to turn local fame into global attention. And here arises, perhaps, the most interesting contradiction. While in Turkey, she is endlessly tested on, is she good enough? Outside the country, Hande has long been perceived as an almost ready international package. Beautiful, recognizable, media savvy, convenient for luxury, understandable to a global audience, with a huge fan base. That's why abroad she has Vogue Arabia, Pomagliato, Cannes, Fashion Week coverage, world fan accounts, and warm audience attitude. While at home, an endless desire to remind her that she's not that great. This is a very familiar Turkish plot. The country produces a star for export and then tests her for strength itself, as if offended by her success. And yet, if you look at it honestly, Hande in Turkey is not simply disliked. She is simultaneously adored, desired, discussed, copied, defended, and lynched. This is not a story of total dislike. This is a story about how especially hard it is in Turkish culture to be a young, beautiful woman who didn't break after her mother's death, survived public bullying over weight, endured talks about too many men, didn't give up either her career or on-screen boldness, and at the same time became even more successful precisely when they tried to morally diminish her. Perhaps this is what irritates the most. Hande Erçel didn't disappear after the hate. She grew through it. And such a thing in a society accustomed to punishing bright women is usually not forgiven quickest of all. And how do you feel about Hande? Do you love her or consider her an overrated personality? We're waiting for your comments under the video.